Welcome to Lesson 4, where we will review problematic internet use, otherwise known as electronic screen syndrome or internet gaming disorder. And the verse guiding this lesson is from Psalm 119, verse 37. Turn my eyes from looking at worthless things and give me life in your ways. It's a challenge today to work with youth who are very connected with their phones and social media. And we're seeing more and more about the harms of social media. And internet gaming and video games have addictive potential and interfere with many child's function in many ways. They're so rewarding in that dopamine pathway that kids don't want to do anything else. And so it becomes a problem. We are seeing a generation with some impairment in socialization abilities. The definition of problematic internet use is maladaptive preoccupation with internet use, experienced as irresistible for periods of time longer than intended. An individual with problematic internet use experiences significant distress or impairment resulting from their internet use. There may be an absence of other psychiatric pathology, and so this really identifies the connection with excessive internet use. Other names for this syndrome are internet gaming disorder and electronic screen syndrome. These are conditions under consideration in the DSM-5, and it is not an official diagnosis as of yet. The identification of the potential for internet addiction has been around for quite a while. And we see here that there was proposal for diagnostic criteria for internet addiction back in 2005. The criteria that was recommended was in category A, experiencing 6 or more of these symptoms. 1, preoccupation with internet activities. 2, recurrent failure to resist the impulse to use the internet. 3, tolerance, a marked increase in internet use needed to achieve satisfaction. 4, withdrawal, as manifested by either a dysphoric mood, anxiety, irritability, and boredom after several days without internet activity. Or B, use of the internet to relieve or avoid withdrawal symptoms. 5, use of the internet for a period of time longer than intended. 6, persistent desire and unsuccessful attempts to cut down or reduce internet use. 7, excessive time spent on internet activities. 8, excessive effort spent on activities necessary to obtain access to the internet. And 9, continued heavy internet use despite knowing that there are some physical or psychological problems that have been caused or exacerbated by internet use. So again, out of those 9 criteria, the individual would need 6 or more. And then category B is there has to be functional impairment, 1 or more of the following 3. Recurrent internet use resulting in a failure to fulfill major obligations. Now, this could be in relationships, it could be schoolwork, it could be job responsibilities. And number 2, impairment in social relationships. Or number 3, behavior violating school rules or laws due to internet use. And then C, the internet addictive behavior is not better accounted for by another disorder. And so we see the criteria are very similar to substance use disorders. And again, it has been identified that internet gaming and other types of social media can impact that dopamine reward system in the brain just as much as substances. From the early onset of the internet, it was identified as having potential for creating disorder. We see in 1998, we have the Internet Addiction Scale, which was developed by Young. And then in 2000, the Internet Addiction Disorder Scale. And so these behavioral rating scales are available to help to quantify and evaluate whether the internet use or video gaming is becoming an impairment and needs to be addressed. And so these are available, and you can certainly consider using the SBIRT approach, going through a screening tool, sharing the results of increased scores, and then having a brief intervention and plan for harm reduction in reducing or moderating the internet use. Now, these rates were identified prior to the COVID pandemic. So I imagine that they might be even higher today. But the prevalence has been estimated to be between 1 and 18% of adolescents meeting criteria for problematic internet use. Boys tend to have a higher rate for problem internet use. Boys can have problems certainly with social media, but also things such as video games as well as pornography. And we are hearing more in the media and in child psychology circles about the negative consequences of social media and problematic internet use. And these include impaired academic performance, impaired social interaction with family members, decreased self-perceived acceptance by peers, and increased drinking in males, and lower self-worth in females. Additional symptoms that are associated with problematic internet use include hostility. We especially see this with parents presenting in outpatient psychiatric settings where Johnny will have a tantrum when he's told to turn off the video games. And so hostility is certainly a problem, as well as depression, irritability, or mood changes. Phobic anxiety is on the increase as well. Individuals are noted to be very anxious in public settings, so much so that they need to take out the phone and engage in some internet connection to decrease that anxiety. Daytime sleepiness or sleep deprivation. And this is huge with our adolescents who are staying up later and later, sometimes 3, 4 a.m., because they can't turn off the video games. And so then experiencing sleep deprivation during the day. The negative consequences of problematic internet use can be considerable and affect all families. And some of those include failed marriages, unemployment, neglected children, sleep deprivation, losing control, craving and withdrawal, the experience of social isolation, academic failure, financial problems, job loss, marital discord, and aggression. And these only increase over time. I do work with families quite often in attempting to decrease video game access to 20-minute intervals. Extended periods of time playing video games really does increase that dopamine reward system. And so having more frequent, shorter intervals of video game or social media access is important. Also, parents need assistance with taking control of the internet use in their homes, using things such as the parental controls and settings, as well having the youth dock their phones in the kitchen or a public place, so they're not in their room on the phone accessing the internet all night long. So these are important areas to include in your work with children and adolescents. And some youth are more at risk for developing a problematic internet use. It has been identified that common psychiatric comorbidities for internet gaming disorder or problematic internet use include attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or depression. And youth who have problematic internet use are often socially isolated and have low self-esteem. As well, children with poor family relationships are more at risk as well for using the internet as an escape. And children who have loneliness, who don't have good social supports, are at an increased risk for developing electronic screen syndrome or problematic internet use. Imaging studies have shown similarities in exposure to internet gaming or social media to substance use addictions. And functional magnetic resonance imaging, or a functional MRI, measures the small changes in blood flow that occur with brain activity. And they've identified changes in the orbitofrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex. It is identified that individuals with problematic internet use or extended internet exposure can have poor executive function and impulse control. And here is an area of need for further development. Sounds like a great DMP project to me. Currently, there are no treatments that are supported by evidence. And part of the problem for this is that it's not an official diagnosis. Now, certainly, it is under consideration. We do have criteria that could be used. We have rating scales. So we need to be doing research in this area and coming up with treatment protocols that are helpful for children and families that are experiencing problem internet use. There are not any pharmacologic or psychotherapeutic interventions that have received enough testing to really promote. So this is a huge shortcoming in uh, treatment studies of problematic internet use, and hopefully an area that will receive much more attention going forward. And here is a list of some of the studies that have been done focusing on internet addiction. And we have a variety of treatment modalities utilized, including CBT, methylphenidate, bupropion, reality training, and multimodal counseling. And here are some suggestions for interventions to use when you are noticing increased problems related to your patient's internet use. Uh, Certainly helping the child and family identify patterns of use with a logbook. Set clear, specific goals, of course, collaborating with the child and the parents, and this can be done using a behavioral contract as well. just as we do with substance use disorder. It is important to limit and shorten internet usage time. Again, having very clear parameters about the use is so important. Negotiate one computer-free day per week. Some protocols include a detox period of a week or two with no internet use at all before adding it back in short, more frequent time periods. Reminder cards with negative consequences of the internet use clearly listed can be helpful, and those can be tailored specifically to the individual, what negative consequences they have encountered. It's important to make a list of former hobbies or interests that have been neglected. And then in the behavioral contract, increase time spent on sports, hobbies, and other non-internet activities. As well, creating a problematic internet use support group, social media free or video game anonymous, but be creative and come up with a way of engaging both youth and families in collaborating on this problem. We know that support groups are so helpful for other addictive processes. And so this is a huge area of need for our community. So I hope that some of you will decide to take on the challenge in this area.